viewers, good to have you with us in this edition of the Urban Debate. Tonight we discuss the new Delta Plus variant one more time. Between the conversations and the reportage from yesterday to today, much has changed. From the central government saying that it was a variant found mainly in 3 states, we now know cases have been detected in 8 states across our country. From the union government last evening, first saying that there are over 22 cases, we now know that over 40 cases have already been detected across these 8 states. Maharashtra being the biggest one with about 21 cases. Madhya Pradesh, 6 cases. Kerala, 3. Karnataka, 2. Punjab, 1. Tamil Nadu, 3, says the union government. The state government says 1. Andhra Pradesh and Jammu are the others. And you have to keep this in mind. These have been detected via exhaustive testing in genome sequencing. So we don't really know the extent in those areas, in these specific districts, which is why the center has already put out an advisory asking states to take this seriously now. Delta Plus variant is now a variant of concern in our country. The union government has told the states to take immediate containment measures in areas where more cases have been detected. These clusters, for example, in Maharashtra or even Kerala. They have been asked to ramp up the testing and tracking, speed up vaccination in these places as well. And of course, the usual COVID norms that have to be followed. Now, we don't know too much yet about the Delta Plus variant, except that it is now a further variant of the Delta kind. And Delta variant itself has become perhaps the most dominant now in most countries across the world, including in our country. Also believed to be responsible for the massive spike that we saw during the second wave. So now, obviously, something which is a newer version of that will be something of interest to our scientists and experts. Does it spread as fast or faster? Does it infect as quickly or more easily than even Delta variant? Do the vaccines and some of the drugs that we have right now, which are being used to treat patients, will those work on Delta Plus? These are the questions we're still seeking answers to. There are divided voices on whether the antibodies drugs may actually work to the same extent on this or not. I must point out, not enough study has been done so far because it's still a relatively newer variant. But always good to know as much as we can about the new variants around us. This is what will decide the policies by expert. This is what will decide the policies by state. This is what could decide, if we don't take it seriously right now, how seriously the next wave comes and how quickly the next wave comes. Should it change our behavior? Let's ask our experts. We say good evening to Dr. Shashank Joshi, Dean in Indian College of Physicians at Lilavati Hospital, member of the task force in Maharashtra. Dr. Anish T.S., Associate Professor for Community Medicine at Government College in Tipuram, member of the task force again for Kerala. Professor Shashidhara, Professor of Biology at Ashoka University, joining us this evening as well. Dr. Ravi, virologist and retired professor and head for virology at NIMHANS, with us this evening. And Dr. Subramanian Swaminathan, Director for Infectious Diseases, Gleneagles Global Health in Chennai. Good evening to all of you and thank you for joining us. Dr. Shashank Joshi, let's start off with you. Considering that we do know that there are a larger number of cases already that have been detected in Maharashtra. Now, what do we know so far about Delta Plus?
So, Tanvi, thank you. Somewhere in April early, the CSIR Institute for Genomics and Integrative Biology and Government of Maharashtra signed a memorandum of understanding based on the Kerala experience. And each district of Maharashtra, that is the 36 districts of Maharashtra, a weekly genomic surveillance of 100 samples per district was initiated. And from April, May, systematically every week 100 samples were sent to the Institute of Genomics and Integrative Biology under a joint project. In fact, even I'm a part of that project. And Dr. Rajesh Karyakarte, who's from BJ Medical College, was coordinating with Dr. Lahane and from the Medical Education and Drugs Department. And from that analysis, what was observed is that there have been some variants of concern and variants of interest. Now, what is popularly called as so-called delta plus probably is delta minus. The data is scanned. What we know about this so-called AY1 probably may be more transmissible, but may not be as transmissible as the delta variant. That is the initial observations. So there is no need to panic. That's number one. And number two, its virulence is unknown because most of the cases who were impacted in the month of May have been followed up and they have done reasonably okay. So I do not think that there is a cause of concern. At the same time, our public health measures should be absolutely in place because when a new variant of concern occurs, we need to be cautious and careful that there is no major outbreak because it may cluster more. That's all we know about this. And we need to ensure that we keep testing. We ensure that there is double masking. We aggressively do saturation of the population with vaccination, and that cannot be looked at. So I think the first thing is there is no need to panic. Probably it is more of a delta minus than delta plus, and probably it is a little less transmissible than the standard delta. And the AY1 samples, which is just picked up, the samples which have been picked up from Ratnagiri this week, which the results will be available next week, probably will decide whether there is any cause for major concern. But obviously from Ratnagiri, from Jalgaon, from Palghar, some samples have tested positive. Predominantly the cluster is from Ratnagiri. And we are concerned, and that's why that part of them, the curves are very much in place. And we have to be very careful and mindful as we unlock the curves. And we need strict adherence to COVID protocols and COVID behavior. But clearly we are very much on the alert, looking at our past experience from Akola and Amravati, from where the original Delta came. And it appears to be a homegrown strain.
It appears to be homegrown, you say. Dr. Shashank Joshi, a follow-up question to you before I go to other panelists. In places where it has been detected or multiple cases have already emerged, what happens next? Do you do a more exhaustive sampling in those regions itself? Do we completely shut it down? Because, I mean, honestly speaking, we actually got a comment from the administrators of one of those districts, and his response was simply that, oh, all of them were asymptomatic. They were all, nicely now recovered. The positivity rate is extremely low, and we've screened that area. Now, is screening that area, and how big an area is required?
So you are absolutely right, Tanvi, that the containment was done immediately because these test results were communicated quick and fast, and the collectors of those geographies were informed immediately. But the curves are very much in place, and these are all level 4, level 5 curves. So there is no relaxation in curves in many of these areas and geographies, and the testing has been ramped up, including genomic surveillance. So genomic surveillance has been ramped up. The only concern from this so-called new variant of Delta is whether it will have an immune escape, and whether it will have an immune escape for antibodies or plasma, both of which are experimental and novel therapies, which is more or less out, or whether they'll escape any vaccine is the only issue which is unsorted or unresolved, and for which we need a larger sample size. But from those geographies of concern and that district of concern, definitely a large sample has been retested, and those results are awaited, and we'll have to give it a few weeks because, genomic testing takes a little while for the results to be available.
Okay. Let me also bring in Dr. Anish on this, because Dr. Anish, the other state where multiple cases have emerged has been the state of Kerala. So far, what have been your findings and learnings about Delta Plus?
Yes, thank you, Tanvi. I agree fully with Dr. Shashank Joshi. In Kerala also, we are doing the similar kind of an analysis. 150 cases in each district from the whole 14 districts of Kerala is sent for analysis. And we are actually getting many different types of variant of concerns and variant of interest. In Delta Plus, what is happening? It is actually a combination of AY1 and AY2. There is actually a mutation in the receptor binding domain, that is K417N. That mutation, that is not actually a new mutation. It was present in 617.1. Okay, in Delta, we have got 1617.1 and 1617.2. And we found that 1617.2 is actually more emerging than 617.1, where this mutation were actually present. That means, as Dr. Shashank Joshi has already said, sometimes it may be a Delta minus. That means the transmission potential of this particular variant can be less. but we are not sure. It is actually comparatively a new variant. So we have to follow them up, and we have to be very cautious that if there is any tendency to emerge like a new variant, or it is actually just like showing an immune escape type of reaction, just like Dr. Shashank mentioned, then we have to be very cautious about that. But now, all over the world, maybe including US, Europe, Kerala, and in India and Eastern Asia, we have got more than 200 samples are there all over the world. And now we are not able to predict anything about that. But it is just like you just see, definitely it is a Delta. So there is a variant, it is a variant of concern. And it is just like you are witnessing a group of buffaloes are running, and we are finding that some of them are slightly white. And you think that, okay, is the white buffaloes are going to overpower the other things or something like that. That is the thing that we are actually noticing now. More than that, we are not need to afraid, but definitely we have to test more in the areas where Delta Plus is identified, not because we have got enough proof that Delta Plus is creating more infections, but just to survey things and we have to study, because we have to save our country from a potential variant of concern if it is having some kind of additional effect or something that we are not sure now. Okay. Definitely, it is on our radar.
Okay, one interesting thing that both you and Dr. Shashank Joshi said is it could also be Delta minus, which means that the transmissibility may actually not be as fast as that of the Delta variant. So that's important to remember as well. But Dr. Ravi, what makes, obviously constantly the virus is evolving into hundreds and thousands of strains. What makes Delta variant something that stands out already, the white buffalo amidst the herd, as Dr. Anish was saying?
Delta has two very important mutations that have rendered it more infectious. And this is in the very important portion of the spike protein that makes it attach better to receptors. Virus cell interactions are like lock and key. So to put it in lay language, the Delta variant seems to have the best key to unlock cells, human cells. So it is spreading faster. It's able to engage better with the receptor, and so it gets in more efficiently and it replicates more efficiently. The more viruses get into a cell, the more they can be able to replicate better. So that is how Delta has been shown as the most infectious among all variants. Remember that. UK, England, Public Health England has shown very clearly that the Delta variant is more infectious than the Alpha variant, which is the UK strain. That was supposed to be 40% more infectious than what was circulating last year, which is a modification of the parent Wuhan virus, which had one important mutation, D614G. So here comes Delta variant that is better than the UK variant in terms of its ability to infect cells. So consequently, it is more infectious. I just want to endorse completely what Dr. Shashank Joshi said. We have to keep vigilant. Definitely, it's important. We cannot take it lightly because Delta itself is a variant of concern. And within that, there is another lineage that has emerged. But at the same time, there is no need to panic. Right now, we do not know if it is more virulent. It doesn't look like, from the data, whatever is available, it doesn't look like it is causing more severe disease or it is causing more deaths. As Dr. Shashank Joshi said, Maharashtra has the highest experience. And number two, it's too early to say if it is more infectious because we'll have to follow all the contacts of these index patients who are Delta plus positive, and then study to what extent they got infected, and then do some calculations to find out if is it more infectious than Delta. But remember one thing, Tanvi, that any variant that emerges, as Dr. Joshi and Dr. Anish have very clearly said, I would like to repeat at the cost of boring you that wearing a mask, maintaining distance, avoiding crowding is the most important preventive measure. And as we are unlocking down, it's all the more important that we reiterate COVID appropriate behavior is the only one that can prevent from Delta becoming a problem. We don't know whether it's more infectious, but it can be. That also we don't know. Better to assume it is going to be as infectious as Delta and then take our precautions. And the last word is, as of now, all vaccines protect against variants when it comes to severe disease and death. So I am not worried on that count because it's a sublineage. The only thing is it has escaped monoclonal antibody, but we do not have data to say that it is more virulent. So it can cause breakthrough infections, but I'm not worried about breakthrough infections as long as it's not more virulent. I'll stop here.
Okay, it can cause breakthrough infections, but if it's not too virulent or deadly, then it won't be such a big worry. But Dr. Swaminathan, how long has this existed? We first detected it around April. How long does a strain need to exist and thrive and spread for us to start taking it seriously amongst the 100 others that may be out there?
That's exactly the point. I'm worried we are running away with it without knowing more about what we are doing. Yes, we should be cautious. I'm going to explain what Dr. Ravi said in a different way. Is this a variant of concern? First thing, variant of concern is a designation given by the WHO, not by you and me. Number two, designation of variant of concern has to look at three criteria. It has to be more transmissible. It has to be either or it has to be more virulent or cause different kind of disease, or it should not be preventable by our usual measures like vaccination. You summarized it very beautifully and said we don't have data on any of these. How are we calling it a variant of concern? It's a variant. Once we start calling everything a variant of concern, there'll just be unnecessary panic. At this point, it's a variant. The point is, 6 months ago, when we started seeing variants, we did not do enough. We did not study it well enough. We did not follow through on what was happening. And now I'm worried we're going the other way. We are calling everything a variant of concern. Everything is, Chicken Little calling the sky falling down and things like that. Yes, we need to be very cautious. Yes, we need to reinforce vaccination. Yes, we need to reinforce socially appropriate behavior. And yes, more such variants will come up. But before we start calling everything a variant of concern, let us do the scientific interrogation to find out what's happening. The news that I'm hearing so far is very, very reassuring. People are getting very mild disease and nobody's having severe disease. To me, that's good news. Let's wait for more news. Let's wait for more data. Then we'll take it up as to what is to be done about that. Because at this point, we don't have any data. We're just grasping at straws and we are blowing it out of proportion. So let's not do that. Let's be responsible. Let's just say we got a new variant. We need more data and we will take it from there.
No, so I understand what you're saying. And there is always the fear of, moving too fast or jumping the gun. But it could also be because the last time there were concerns about not jumping the gun soon enough or not reacting fast enough, and now nobody wants to take that risk again. I don't think right now, maybe a few months later, we will feel stronger, but right now I don't think any of us are in a position to go through the whole trauma one more time. Professor Shashidhara, where do you stand, on this debate that's also happening on to what extent will the antiviral drugs or even the vaccines work on it, or do we not know enough to go either ways?
Okay, so I think, Ravi has already mentioned, he's a virologist, he explained it very nicely. Two things. One is, first I want to sort of clarify one aspect rather than reiterate what others are saying. When you say variant of concern, there are two aspects of the variant of concern. When WHO declares something as variant of concern, it is already a variant of concern for everybody in the world. And for all virologists, for all biologists and immunologists, every variant is a variant of concern because we want to study that. We want to know whether it is, what would be the implication of that for the public health. So for the study purpose, it is better to consider every variant seriously. I think you just mentioned, Professor Swaminathan also mentioned just now, that every variant should be taken seriously by the researchers, study it well, so that before it becomes a real variant of concern because the public health, you want to stop it, right, as early as possible. Detecting early and studying it and preventing it is the best strategy. Now, this particular variant, which was first detected as early as in April, just before, actually 2 weeks before the second wave was hitting the peak, means, it has not spread much. Perhaps it is not going to be that transmissible. It is indeed maybe a delta minus, as Dr. Joshi was talking about. And so it may not be, finally may become a variant of concern. It's good if it doesn't become a variant of concern for the public health, but it is better to be very cautious and take necessary actions. Coming to the vaccine question, right in March, when people started developing vaccines against, the SARS-CoV-2, people knew that there are going to be new variants, right? It's very obvious that, as the infection spread, there will be more and more variants. So vaccine product designers, they actually took into consideration very different possible new variants, because with the help of computers, data science, AI and ML, you could actually simulate and see what are the variants that may actually, emerge in the population, and then see whether our vaccine would be effective against them. So in that context, large number of vaccine producers already taken into consideration a variety of different types of variants, but there would be a host factor heterogeneity too. For example, if I'm vaccinated, of course I am vaccinated, and I'm not sure whether I have produced enough antibodies and diversity of antibodies, the battery of antibodies against every epitope of the spike protein, and in sufficient quantity so that every variant that is present and which may get infected in one of the variants, whether I'm protected against or not. That much study is still not done because we are going through this pandemic. We don't have enough data on that. Once we have sufficient data, then hopefully we know which variant would be really a variant of concern even before much of these studies done only based on the available data, backtracking to the vaccines. But as of now, we know that most vaccines are effective against almost all possible variants, because if a variant is infecting, that means it can bind to the human cell. If it can bind to the human cell, our vaccine should be able to stop it. Any variant, if it can't even bind to the human cell, anyway, it's not going to be a variant of any concern for us. So in that way, I think we are fine, okay, as of now. But we should be very cautious and wear masks. That's it.
Okay, Dr. Joshi, do we know that it originated in our country, but which region has it originated from? And I'm curious to now understand that, since we've now detected cases in 8 different states and not just 1 or 2 regions.
So it is likely to be homegrown, but the data is scant. So if you look at the AY1 and AY2, the AY2 mainly is in California, AY1 comes from UK, Nepal and India. So it is likely and probable, but I think, it appears to be homegrown. So that's one thing which is very clear cut. We know we are now unlocking, there is a lot of migration and mobility, but standard public health measures which each person on the panel has reiterated has to be mandatory. I think we cannot repeat the mistake which we made between the first and second wave. Second wave is not even over, and people think corona is over in a place like Delhi or Mumbai. That's completely non-acceptable, because that's exactly how we will have cluster breakthroughs. And even though this may be a delta minus, it is still much more spreading or transmissible than the original virus which we saw in the first wave. So clearly we know that delta is more transmissible. It may not be as transmissible as the delta of the second wave, but it is still a transmissible variant. We have not yet been able to get the R0 on it appropriately, which we will do in times to come. But I think in the next month and a half, till we don't sufficiently vaccinate our geographies with at least 60 or 70% with vaccination, we need to mandatory double mask. And I agree with you that we have picked it up from multiple places, but the numerator is very small. The numbers are very small. It's 1, 2, 1, 2, except for Ratnagiri and Jalgaon. Most of the places have reported 1 or 2 cases. So we need to increase and again go up on the genomic surveillance. INSACOG initially had removed that 5% of all the tests should be done for genomic testing because the second wave numbers were too large. And we don't have capacity to do those numbers. Now that the numbers have shrunk and we are reporting not more than 40,000 cases a day, at least 5% of genomic surveillance with serosurveillance must continue, because you remember one thing, we always pick up variants of interest and variants of concern when the wave is receding or when the numbers are less. That's the time actually the virus escapes and a mutation occurs. So this is the time where our genomic surveillance and radar, as Dr. Anish was also saying, should be at its peak. And which is why some states, like whether it's Kerala or Maharashtra or Delhi, they are systematically doing district-wide genomic surveillance. And I'm told such surveillance is occurring across the country. And we need to be vigilant. We cannot be off guard, but we don't need to panic and send some wrong signals that we have a variant of concern and there is a cause of concern.
Okay, just taking this point further of, these variants being, like you rightly pointed out, there are larger number of cases in Ratnagiri, in Jalgaon, in Palakkad, in Bhopal, and Shivpuri, few of those districts, but, one offhand case here and there as well. Now, so that's the question, Dr. Ravi. How do we explain the fact that it's, being detected in 8 states? It's not 1 or 2 regions. Would it have traveled because people travel there? Or is it that, it's evolving in multiple regions in a similar fashion?
Tanvi, let us be use common sense to explain this, okay? Simultaneously, 40 different people generating mutants is unlikely. That's what common sense tells. Movement of people we know is responsible for carrying of virus from one place to another, and there has been movement of people across the states. We have not sealed down borders. So I believe that we don't know where it is originated, this mutation. First of all, is it in India? As Dr. Shashank Joshi said, maybe there are pointers that it may be from India. But that keeping aside, what is reassuring is all these cases which have been reported in India, mind you, the samples were collected minimum 2 to 4 weeks before today. And as Dr. Sashidhar and Dr. Shashank said, it is reassuring that it has not become a big problem in 4 weeks. 4 weeks is a long time in an epidemic, okay? But I'm not saying that we should assume that it is less infectious. No. We have to be cautious. Remember, because we are gradually unlocking. One point I want to make very clearly is that what contributed to the second wave variant was one of the components that contributed. If we are not careful, as everybody has been telling, in terms of avoiding super spreading events, whether it is delta plus, delta minus, gamma, z, epsilon, zeta, whatever comes tomorrow will cause waves, because we have not been able to cover everybody with immunization. Please let us send a message that we have to be careful, avoid super spreading events, congregations, closed spaces, crowds. We know these 3 C's are very important. Yet, we know more about the virus. We know so much about the biology, so much about variants, so much about mutations, but we know very little about human behavior. Please send out the message that human behavior alone can control this virus.
But, Dr. Ravi, I think by now, I don't know about all of you on my panel, but I'm beginning to lose hope on trying to tell people again and again. Whoever, there may be a few set of people who still want to be careful, double mask up when they get out. But I mean, every day we get visuals from across the cities and towns and villages, and not just limited to super spreader events. I think people are just now fed up. They were fed up actually 6-8 months ago, and they seem to have forgotten the pain of second wave already. If you see in the large numbers that they're stepping out without taking the basic precautions. Obviously, we can't be locked in forever. But Professor Shashidhar, it is a problem when we get out and we don't even wear the mask properly, and we assume that everything's fine because, well, the cases have come down now. That part we're not able to change. You can't stop people beyond a point. We can constantly remind them. Then what else do we do?
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, the human behavior is the most important. Even post-vaccination, that's also important. But the as a public health, policy for the government and for the authorities, it will be a hopeless situation if the public if they do not cooperate. The only way they can then do is increase vaccination, fast track the whole universal vaccination so that more and more people are vaccinated. The pediatric vaccines have to be quickly developed and put into all the clinical trials, and then start vaccinating even people who are below 18-year-old age. I think finally for the government, for the authorities, the only solution is vaccination, because we cannot force people to follow COVID appropriate behavior. You can only request with folded hands, keep on reminding, use variety of different techniques. There are variety of psychological techniques, social behavior techniques to nudge people to wear masks. We can only nudge them, right? And there, of course, the ultimate is lockdown. Lockdown is not going to be useful, and it's going to be detrimental for the livelihood. So, the problem can be solved only by vaccination right now.
Yes, and I ask this question because, it then links to how you design your policy. If human behavior won't change with multiple requests or even, awareness campaigns and what have you not, then it has to perhaps come down to policy makers to ensure, Dr. Anish, that, we're able to contain this. I mean, if people don't get the threat of COVID, the original, or Delta or a Delta plus or minus or any other variant, then it would have to be individual policy makers, individual states or district administrators who will have to come out and say, okay, then we are not ready to unlock at this pace until we know more about this. Would that be a fair question to ask? Why unlock at a fast pace until we know more about this?
Definitely we have to unlock, because we have to live on the base, especially people belonging to the lower economic sector cannot live without unlocking. So that is a different question. That is a sociological question. But I want to add one of my personal experience with an old age home in Trivandrum. There is an old age home in Trivandrum, and the entire home, out of 71 out of 90 inmates were affected by COVID-19 in Trivandrum. But luckily, all of them were vaccinated. 2 vaccines were given, Covishield, and we found that at least out of the 71, 5 or 6 people were just hospitalized for moderate symptoms and no casualty. So that is an old age home. I mean, most of the people are comorbid, and even then, out of the 71, there is no casualty because of vaccination. So that kind of information we have to spread across the country. The vaccination saves life. That is a very important aspect of vaccination. And added to that, if you are going for the COVID-appropriate behavior, if we are able to teach our people that how to behave in a pandemic, then definitely thousands of lives will be saved. So that is a very important aspect.
Okay, Dr. Swaminathan, would you want to comment on this as well? And obviously, I don't mean, be in a lockdown to the extent where no economic activity happens at all, because there are people who need to earn their livelihood. But I mean, to the extent of allowing pubs and bars and malls to open with thousands of people coming in, is that something that the state should be cautious about?
Well, the more pessimistic way of looking at it is what can't be cured has to be endured. But, put a more positive spin on it. I think the economics will have to dictate it. Some countries have mandated that you can't come back to work till you get your vaccine. So we need to first make the vaccine available as much as possible, because we can't jumpstart the economy without the vaccine. Because with social distancing and masking and things like that, it's going to be very difficult in many sectors. Masking at least is possible, but social distancing is going to really kill many sectors. And for that reason, we need to invest in vaccines and move forward very, very quickly. So I think we need to push this. We need to legislate some of it. But we also need to remember that some of the parts of the community which is very, very vulnerable also has very, very significant difficulty following this mandate. I'm not saying that we should be lenient, but we need to understand their concerns and also try and see how we can meet them halfway by basically getting the vaccine out first. So while it's easy for us to sit in our chairs and in our ivory towers and our cushy jobs where we can wear a mask and sit in an AC room, I'm thinking of the manual laborer who's out in the community working under the hot sun, and wearing a mask can be pretty difficult, especially in the height of summer. So let's pause and think for a minute. Maybe we can try and help them out by getting the vaccine to them as fast as possible. I think we need to look at the human side of it while we are also being scientific and objective. Because yes, I agree. As a medical personnel, for me, the concept of another wave is abhorrent. I'm scared. I'm worried. I don't think any of us have the energy to do another round of this. We've had enough punishment. We can't take any more. But at the same time, let's look at the people at the end of the stick. They've also got a bad beating. And yes, while there are these carefree people who want to live larger than life, a lot of people are doing this because they don't have a choice.
Correct.
So I think we need to be understanding of that situation as well. And to me, the bigger answer is the vaccine.
Well, we've done, I was just looking at the numbers that we've got for today, since, third day since the vaccination started under the new system and the new policy, and we've managed to do about 62 lakh vaccinations. I mean, if we're able to even keep above 50 lakh every day, I think that would be a good pace. But my fear is we'll run out of vaccines very soon again at this pace to begin with. Very quickly, I am short on time, but Dr. Joshi, I wanted to ask you one last question. Are there any different symptoms or impact of Delta Plus? Does it impact my body in any different way than other COVID variants?
So currently, whatever cases were seen in Maharashtra, they appear to be mild to moderate at best, and nothing more than that. So there is no major deviation from the standard clinical phenotype, but the number is too small to make any observation in that direction.
Okay, so nothing very different. In fact, like you said, mild to moderate were the cases that we found so far. Still initial days, a lot of studying is being done. A lot of states which are already, on their guard, doing a larger number of genome sequencing and testing these samples. And so we would hopefully have a lot more insights and data in the coming days. But the only thing that we can do while we wait for more information is do what we should be doing any which ways in living in COVID times, which is to follow COVID protocols, to wear double mask, to maintain our distance as much as possible, and to keep in mind that COVID is still here, changing forms very, very quickly. Thank you so much to all of the panelists who've joined us on this conversation. We're going to take a very short break. Lots more on the other side. Stay with me.